Yes, go straight towards Lukoil.
There's no more gas left in Russia.
Something going on over there? Yeah, it was really, really bright. Something's not right over there.
Friendly drones are attacking gas plants all over the country.
Once again, spontaneous combustion. In Novosibirsk, a plant caught fire where they made microchips and soldering for the Russian defense industry. And dreams of being a superpower have gone up in smoke again.
Ukrainian flamingos have flown to warmer lands. Crimea is on fire. In Feodosia, after the strike, the largest oil terminal on the entire peninsula went up in flames. Crimea, what's the situation? The Ukrainian armed forces are very close.
The Flamingo in Crimea really did hit its targets. A border post has been liberated, along with 6 FSB boats at once.
A siren and alarm in Dobrosiysk, but it's no reason for Russians to panic. In fact, they're even having fun. The siren is blaring and the guys are singing along. NATO has started hunting Russian planes.
The alliance intercepted 2 AN-12 transport planes flying from Kaliningrad to mainland Russia.
The special military operation is going according to plan. A column of Russian mobilized troops didn't even make it to the front.
And
Even if they had made it, it wouldn't have been for long.
five soldiers burned.
We're discussing these and other top stories of the day right now. You're on the Ukraine YouTube channel. Hello. Joining our broadcast is Pavlo Lakichuk, military expert and head of security programs at the Center for Global Studies Strategy 21. Pavlo, hello. Very glad to see you.
Likewise. Good evening. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. I suggest we start with the major strikes on the territory of the Russian Federation and temporarily occupied Crimea. Zelensky announced the successful use of Neptune and Flaming missiles together, and immediately rumors began to spread that these missiles are also hitting temporarily occupied Crimea. But some Zelensky supporters say that there has been use, there are the first tangible results, specifically from this weapon of ours, but some experts suggest, analyzing data from open sources, that not only these Ukrainian missiles could have led to the results we are seeing. Do you see anything else? Well,
let's put it this way. When the Russians strike us, we watch closely from every shelter, from every basement. We watch to see from which directions the Shaheds are coming, from which directions the missiles are flying. It's not just random. They launch everything they have. Essentially, every such strike involves both ballistic and cruise missiles with different characteristics. Fast, slow, with large reflective surfaces, with small ones. Shaheds, Veran drones, decoy drones. All of these move at different speeds from different directions. Why is that the case? So that our air defense systems cannot fully and effectively respond to them, you see? In other words, the goal is to reduce its effectiveness by using targets that are different and have various characteristics. They move along different courses. Accordingly, a single system can't work against two groups at the same time. We act in exactly the same way. There's no need to invent anything new here. Tactics are indeed tactics. The more diverse and varied types of strike assets are effectively utilized in a coordinated attack at different and distinct stages, the more profoundly effective and impactful that strike ultimately becomes. I'll say even more. When people say, our drones struck, for our drones to strike, we first need to hit the air defense systems with missiles. In order to effectively hit these air defense systems with our missiles, we absolutely need to use anti-radiation missiles directly against the enemy's radar detection stations. It's a whole complex chain involving a wide variety of different strike assets. And that's just at the initial preliminary stage. Later on, you can certainly break it down even further by specific groups. And there are various distinct stages of the strike, the raid, the operation. That's precisely why the more complex the overall operation and the deeper it is situated into hostile enemy territory, the more different types of specialized strike assets truly need to be involved. However, the undeniable fact that both Flamingos and Neptunes were indeed utilized in a single coordinated operation is entirely normal, perfectly acceptable, and it certainly does not inherently imply that they were specifically targeting precisely the same objective or goal. Each individual missile, every distinct type of weapon system, each specific missile, and every unmanned aerial vehicle or drone, they all meticulously serve their own unique and critical function in the execution of such strategic strikes.
Surely, as an expert, you also assess the efficiency coefficient of their use, right? Of the new weapons for the armed forces of Ukraine. Are you satisfied with it or not?
It's actually quite difficult to assess the efficiency coefficient. Sometimes when journalists ask, look, we took out their S-300 in Crimea, how many dollars is that worth? Well, probably it's not about counting in dollars here. Yes, it's really not about counting in dollars. What does destroying that S-300 actually achieve? If Feodosia is burning after the S-300 is hit, then you can assess, well, the strike on Feodosia. How much burned there? 2 fuel tanks. That's about 20,000 tons, right? Well, is that a lot or a little? You have to compare it to 2,000 tons. Is that a lot or a little? Well, I don't know. But the fact is, after this strike, first of all, this fuel won't reach the Russian army that's fighting in the south of our country in the Kherson and Zaporizhia directions. And as a result, tanks, armored vehicles, those buggies, motorcycles, and so on won't be moving. That's one aspect. Another significant aspect to consider is that this will also profoundly affect the Russian economy. That's precisely why it becomes quite difficult to accurately calculate the precise efficiency of each individual strike. This isn't a simple matter of physics. It's a complex and multifaceted strategy. Even the destruction of 6 Russian border patrol boats on the western coast of Crimea might seem insignificant, like, so what, 6 boats destroyed. But in reality, this is already an operation on the Dnipro estuary. Those very 6 crucial boats were extremely necessary for the enemy there, specifically landing craft and patrol boats. We currently lack the adequate means to effectively control that significant body of water. Now, the enemy won't be able to do so either as well. We can strategically take significant advantage of the enemy's currently weakened and vulnerable position within this specific area to effectively accomplish several of our own critical objectives. It is important to understand that we won't be able to directly liberate that particular area through these actions, meaning a targeted strike on the strategically important Donuslav or on the key port of Chornomorsk won't immediately and directly result in the complete freeing of, for instance, the Pazli from the Russian occupation, or perhaps some other similar coastal spit. Nevertheless, despite this direct limitation, these operations will undoubtedly allow our defense forces to operate much more actively and with greater freedom of movement and initiative within that region, creating significant pressure and opening up new tactical possibilities for future engagements.
Well, as they say, water wears away stone, and the Flamingos and Neptunes will keep wearing down the occupiers. And we also need to take into account the social consequences. Even the occupation media are reporting that as a result of the oil depot in Feodosia burning for the 3rd day in a row, people have started leaving the city. These are long-term economic consequences, staff shortages and so on and so forth. So the work will have to be done properly, right?
I don't remember exactly, but speaking of those same strikes on the oil industry, there's a shortage of fuel and lubricants in Crimea, a fuel shortage in Crimea. In reality, there's absolutely no genuine need to completely and utterly collapse the entire economy, or to cause a significant transportation breakdown in a particular and specific region, or even to totally and entirely destroy the vital production of gasoline and other essential fuels and lubricants. There's a certain threshold, about 17%, when Russians have a surplus of fuel, and no matter how much you hit them, everything seems fine. Then once it reaches this threshold, a deficit appears, and when a deficit emerges, it starts to perpetuate itself. Even without any further major blows or significant setbacks, a relatively small, seemingly insignificant shortage can quickly lead to a more moderate deficit And then this deficit regrettably keeps spreading like a pervasive cancer throughout the entire region, especially if there are severe restrictions on the crucial supply of essential fuel and vital lubricants, such as diesel fuel. As long as there was enough diesel and the logistics officers could distribute it to everyone according to regulations and even sell a bit extra on the side, everything was fine. When a shortage appears, some people get their full quota, some get less, and those who do get their quota realize that tomorrow they might be among those who don't. So they try to take even more. Stash some away in barrels, so to speak, to salt it away. And then everything collapses. As Reagan once said, a shortage must exist.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
It must exist, and we're going to make it even worse. And here, by the way, it's worth mentioning the strikes on oil refineries, on logistics plants. 20% of the production capacity of Russian refineries already admit that they are experiencing a shortage of exactly 20%. When exactly will we truly be able to develop it at the current rather rapid pace, especially when we already clearly see strikes reaching deep into the Urals, a significant distance of about 2,000 kilometers away from their origin, and they are indeed getting hit quite effectively? Let's begin our discussion with the critical oil industry sector. By the end of this year, could this result increase significantly, judging by the pace of these strikes we're seeing now?
Well, judging by the pace, it's possible. The main thing here isn't even to increase it, but to maintain it. The essence of systematic strikes is that each strike does not completely put the plant out of commission. For example, the whole plant didn't burn down. Take our Kremenchuk plant, for instance. How many times did the Russians hit it? 11 times, I think, or even more. It's a large enterprise, and the capacities actually needed are much smaller. So from this Lego, we were able to rebuild and reconfigure the production facilities. But during the time when these facilities are being rebuilt and reconfigured, the enterprise comes to a halt. It doesn't produce any valuable products whatsoever. On the contrary, it significantly consumes vast amounts of money. In the specific Russian scenario, this critically means that while they are diligently putting out fires, while dedicated repair crews are actively restoring the extensive damage and painstakingly getting production facilities back up and running efficiently, it typically takes a considerable period of 3 to 4 months. For this entire duration of 3 to 4 months, instead of generating crucial petrodollars, instead of producing essential kerosene, the entire Russian war economy is effectively at a complete standstill, experiencing significant operational paralysis. This enterprise, on the contrary, is consuming dollars for its own recovery. The stream is flowing in a spiritual direction, in the opposite direction. And if you were to strike, say, just once every 3 months at such significant enterprises, then this relatively small continuous stream of resources would simply carve out a completely new channel, and consequently the money would inevitably start flowing in a distinctly different direction. Yes, absolutely not from the Russian energy industry, which is a major source of funding for the specific needs of the Russian occupation army, but on the contrary, a substantial amount of money will be actively taken away from the occupation army's resources to diligently try and restore this vital production capacity.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones also attacked the largest gas plant in the south of the Russian Federation. Facilities belonging to Lukoil and Transneft caught fire there. And here I would like to discuss another statement by Zelensky, that blackouts could be Ukraine's retaliatory measures against the Russian Federation. Today we are seeing the first blackouts, brief but nonetheless very telling, in the Belgorod region. How realistic is it, honestly speaking, for us to cut off electricity and heat, and in which regions of the Russian Federation would this be possible first?
But theoretically, we can absolutely do this. As a compelling example of a widespread blackout, though entirely without our direct involvement, there was a significant incident last summer when the entirety of southern Russia unexpectedly went completely dark due to a severe accident that occurred at the Rostov nuclear power plant. The crucial thing is the entire Russian energy system is meticulously organized and structured by distinct geographical regions. A single primary main energy facility typically supplies electrical power to a specific geographical area, and these individual facilities are often interconnected within a comprehensive network. And consequently, neighboring power plants can effectively help in restoring the crucial balance there, especially during times of increased demand or unexpected disruptions. But if the neighbors can't help and an accident occurs, like at the Rostov nuclear power plant, where an emergency happened due to the heat, the plant went down. But the Kursk nuclear power plant, which was in the combat zone, was unable to help the Rostov plant. The result lasted for a week, more than a week. The entire southern region of Russia was completely plunged into profound darkness. In the summer, the same thing could happen in winter. In general, if we wanted to, we could organize this. There are indeed enough highly skilled specialists and experts who possess the capability to accurately calculate the necessary forces and the extensive resources required for such a complex and sensitive operation. Another significant issue, however, is not even primarily an ethical one, but rather the very clear and unequivocal statement that our president has made, indicating that if Vladimir Putin attempts to initiate a widespread blackout, we will respond decisively and in kind. This firm stance should therefore serve as a powerful and effective deterrent, a comprehensive strategy of containment specifically designed for Russia and its potential aggressive actions. For Russia, yes, and for Putin. Is Vladimir Putin truly prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice, jeopardizing the prosperity and stability of one of his own sovereign regions, and indeed the overall well-being and future prospects of that specific geographical area and its inhabitants, all in a desperate and brutal attempt to completely crush and subjugate the Ukrainian people and their nation?
The answer to this question is already known. The Kursk operation provided it. Putin couldn't have cared less about the fate of his compatriots who were living in the area of active hostilities at that time. So we already know the answer. And I understand where you're going with this. What is more important right now, political strikes or still strikes on logistics, military targets, warehouses, and so on? This is probably a decision for the military and primarily for our military political leadership. A very interesting story happened. It's clear that Russia will intensify its strikes, and the tactic of bringing the war onto the territory of the Russian Federation is working. And thank God we've finally seen it happen, and that our hands are not being tied. It's just a shame that this didn't happen a year ago or even 2 years ago. But here, overall, the greater blame probably lies, first and foremost, with our own production and the behavior of our partners. But there was a telling incident the other day in the Belgorod region. There, a Russian air defense missile, while shooting down Ukrainian flying objects, crashed into a high-rise building. Even Russian media showed this video. We won't discuss the fact that obviously they don't mention Ukrainians, that it was Ukrainian air defense. They just make that up, that's all. I'm curious, judging by the state of their air defense and how they operate, what they use against our flying objects. Russians should prepare themselves for more incidents like this. Do you think these will become widespread? What about when they use their own weapons? They
are already widespread. They are already widespread. Look, why do the Russian forces consistently utilize their formidable Tu-95 strategic bombers, which are long-range, propeller-driven aircraft designed for carrying cruise missiles to launch devastating strikes against our cities originating from the strategically significant Caspian Sea area, flying over the Caspian Sea area? Where is Engels, Saratov region? Where is Ukrainka? Where is Belaya? In order to launch, they head south over the Caspian Sea and carry out missile launches there. From a rational point of view, this can't be explained, unless you carefully consider that approximately 70 to 80% of these missiles actually function and work as intended. They are launched. The remaining 20%, after they completely separate from their primary carrier vehicle, simply fall straight down. If the Russians were to carry out these specific launches over densely populated Russian territory, everything would inevitably fall directly onto Russian towns and villages. It's precisely the same situation here. On the 22nd day, when they decisively enter Ukrainian airspace, they then turn sharply toward the massive Volgodonsk reservoir. It's the same thing, because with these missiles, who knows where they'll fly or if they'll fly at all? They don't know. There's no such certainty. The S-300s are anti-aircraft missile systems. S-300s, S-300s, S-400s. Why did they strike Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, and our cities with anti-aircraft missiles? They fire them indiscriminately, just shooting blindly, because they believed that over the past 30 years, a huge number of them had been produced in bulk. But this also shows that these missiles were stored for a long period without maintenance. Any missile specialist will tell you about the properties of solid fuel, that over time it changes its characteristics, and there comes a point when with every launch, you don't know if it will fly, not fly, or explode right on the launcher. No one knows. And the Russians have already reached that point. On top of that, add the shortage of launchers. Because the missile launches from the brigade divisions that were originally deployed around Ukraine 4 years ago have all been completely knocked out and rendered inoperable, and they are now replacing them with new missile launchers being brought in from as far away as the distant Urals and remote Siberia, which, to put it mildly, are also far from being brand new or in pristine condition. Russian factory production simply cannot adequately keep up, and indeed it is not keeping up, with the sheer number of significant losses the Russians are currently suffering. That's why they're turning to the Turks, saying, "Let us buy back our air defense systems that we sold to you in 2016. Now there's even a shortage of them in Russia itself. Shells, new Russian shells, the whole story of defects. Soviet shells that have been lying in open storage for decades. That's another story. Everyone, even more so with the North Korean ones, even the bloggers themselves write horror stories about North Korean mines and shells. Every shot is a lottery. Either it explodes in the barrel or it flies off somewhere. Where exactly, they don't know.
Well, in the end, we understand that in this lottery, they're going to lose. We can send our regards to the citizens of the Russian Federation. Let them now go to bed every night with this lottery of fortune, wondering if a Russian air defense missile will hit their apartment building. But all complaints should be directed at the Kremlin. And of course, they won't do that. Well, to sum up, we can probably say, Pavel, that finally, yes, this boomerang of war launched 3.5 years ago with the full-scale invasion, I mean by Putin on the territory of Ukraine. It is now, with a good whistle, finally coming back to Russian territory. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your analysis with us. Let me remind our viewers that I was speaking with Pavlo Lakirchuk, military expert and head of the security program at the Center for Global Studies Strategy 21. Thank you again, and see you next time.